Hi, I'm Bob DeCosta. I'm filling in for Dan Drake, and this is Front Up, and I'm here with Cam Gammill. Cam is a jack of all trades guy in Nantucket. He's got a real estate office. He's a part owner in Bill Fisher Tackle, and he's also a charter boat captain. And we're going to talk a little bit about the squid fishery and the 3 mile closure and where we're at with all that. So, Cam, good to have you on the show. Thanks for doing this with me.
It's a pleasure, Bobby. Thank you.
So, what have you heard? What's the latest?
Well, the latest is it sounds like the state did not extend the inshore fishery, which is huge news for us.
Right,
it's
right. First time in 3 years they haven't done that, which is a big help.
It's a huge help, and my hope is it's based on science and looking at some of the squid catch, but perhaps it's some of the pressure we put on as a community. So it's a great effort on our part, but hopefully it's a combination of it.
Yeah, and I just found out, you probably don't even know this yet, but I talked to Pete Kaiser yesterday, and he just got back from the Mid-Atlantic Council hearings, and they've changed the regulation for after the quota's caught. So last year, for example, once they reached the 12 million pounds of squid, they were allowed to take 2,500 pounds of squid per trip.
Which is outrageous.
They ended up taking another 7 million pounds of squid. Well,
go ahead and put it in perspective, because I have no idea what you guys already know what it's about.
So they've now dropped that 2,500 pounds a day to 250. So that'll mean all those boats, once the quota's caught, they won't bother to go fish for them anymore. So hopefully that'll be an extra 7 million pounds of squid that'll actually get a chance to spawn.
What's huge about that is that was originally brought in, and my understanding is because as a bycatch, when they were catching the extra squid, they just didn't want to have it thrown overboard.
Right.
But what's happened is the value of squid in recent years, it became a primary catch, and they used that 2,500 pounds as a loophole.
Right.
So by bringing that down to 250 pounds, they essentially took away that loophole and will alleviate the pressure on a valuable bait fish.
So for a little update on what we're talking about here is last year, we've all seen the draggers south of Nantucket along the south shore there, especially in May and June. That area there, it's a small area where the squid concentrate to get into the sound to spawn, and they also spawn on the south side of the island. They took 19 million pounds of squid out of that area in trimester 2, which is the summer months last year, which is just ludicrous that we allowed them to take that much.
But we got to put that in perspective. So what scientists have allocated for that trimester is 8 million pounds.
Right.
So 8 million pounds is what science said could sustain it. Now what they did on top of that 8 million is if they didn't catch their full quota in trimester 1, which is the first part of the year, they could roll over 50% of that catch into trimester 2. So that bumped it from 8 to 12, which is an outrageous number. And then as Bobby spoke about, that 2,500 pounds actually calculated up to another 7 million pounds. So it almost equaled what was the original desired catch total just through what was the bycatch loophole. So it's incredible that they've closed that and that we're getting in the right direction.
A squid's lifespan is 12 months. So if you clean out all the squid this year, you won't have squid next year.
Well, what's interesting about that is our first trimester this year, what happened?
There were no squid, and there's no squid now. The squid fleet is, the squid catch is down significantly from this point last year. So some of it could have to do with water temp. It is colder this year, but we'll see. I mean, I noticed, I went out to Matticat yesterday and took a ride, and there's a few more boats there now than there was a week ago. So
there are ebbs and flows. I'm on the water in Matticat almost every day, and what we aren't seeing is the fleet as big as 29 boats as we saw last year. I think boats are coming in and hoping there's more squid on a daily basis, and there's certainly fluctuations of squid, but there aren't what there were. And one of the big pieces to it is, one, they're clearing out the squid, but they're clearing out the reproduction cycle of the squid. What these squid are doing, and we've learned in the last couple of years, are putting squid mops on the floor, and that's the way they reproduce. The squid mops need about 30 days, give or take, to germinate, and once they do, they flush into the warmer Nantucket Sound, and that's where they spawn and then flush out through the east side. In the last recent years, and actually this year, I found a whole bundle of mops sitting on the beach. I've got pictures with it, and I've actually had some clients send me pictures as well. So that's a little bit of the other concern, not just taking the actual squid, but taking the future squid. And I think that's where we're seeing a part of the problem in why there's not as much squid for these commercial guys to catch. Certainly there are other factors, as you spoke about, but you have to address what we know.
And, the squid is our major forage fish here in the summer months. So bluefish, bass, fluke, sea bass, everything that we catch around here eats the squid. So if we don't have the squid, we don't have the fish. The fish will just move on. So that, anyone who likes to beach fish on the South Shore, without the squid, you're not going to catch many bluefish or bass off the South Shore.
And while that may sound anecdotal, and we focus on striped bass because it's the spring right now, and that's what a lot of fishermen equate with Nantucket, bluefish has been our staple for years. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember a year as poor as last year, bluefishing wise. Our South Shore used to be kind of our banner fishery, where you'll see fish finning in a light day. You can catch 20, 30 fish in a tide as an angler on a rod and reel without too much trouble. And last year, those fish just weren't to be found.
Yep.
And it's very simple. Fish go where bait is. And if we lack the bait, we'll lack the fish.
Yeah. Yeah, we catch 95% of the fish in 5% of the ocean, and that's where the bait is. And it's an unfortunate thing. Over the years, the fisheries have been mismanaged and overfished to the point where there just aren't a lot of fisheries left for these commercial guys to fish. So they've all shifted into the squid fishery now, and the pressure is just too much for what the biomass can bear, at least in my mind. And then the issue is bycatch. I mean, you can talk a little bit about that, but you're using a net that's only 2-inch mesh, so nothing gets through the net.
I mean, when you're dragging nets and there's 29 boats doing it at a time in such a concentrated area. Now, don't get me wrong, I think these guys need a livelihood. I just think there's a way to do it a little more sustainably and not such a concentrated spot. But it's inevitable there's bycatch in there. And just having witnessed a minor part of that fishery, having gone around those boats, you're seeing them take gas and throw skate overboard, throw fluke overboard, throw black sea bass overboard on a consistent basis. And that is a huge part of the problem, and compounded with other things. But I just think there's a way to do it a little bit more sustainably where we can all benefit, because I don't want to run those guys out of a job.
Right. Yeah. And we all agree on that. We're not trying to shut the fishery down. We just want to spread the fishery out of this one area. National Marine Fisheries has an observer program where they put observers on these boats and they actually count the amount of bycatch. And from their data from 2015, for every 100 pounds of squid that they caught, they had 57 pounds of bycatch.
That's enormous.
Yeah, it is. And so that's all fish that are thrown back dead, sea bass, dogfish, scup, bluefish, bass, herring. There's multiple species. They catch sharks in the net. They catch everything in the nets. And most of the time it all ends up going over the side, and very, very little of it lives. So, it's we want to spread these boats out a little more, not concentrate them all in that 1 3-mile line. It's like a highway for the squid. They come out of the ocean into the Sound. There's only several spots there where they can funnel through Muskegon Channel and Vineyard Sound, and they picket line this Sound, these lines, and nothing gets through. So, how's the fishing? How's the West End been this year?
The West End's been pretty fun. It hasn't been on fire, and we haven't seen huge fish, but there's been a consistent stream of fish, which is probably indicative of we haven't had as much pressure from the squid boats. Yeah. Further towards the vineyard seems to be a little bit more consistent, where you have that bigger flow of water coming through and less concentration of boats. But overall, we're happy with the status of our fishery right now, especially compared to the past 3 or 4 years. We're seeing quite a bit of bait come through. It's not overwhelming, and we're not seeing big fish. But that's okay.
Same thing for us on the East End. We're seeing a lot of small bass, which is encouraging for the future. I noticed we'll have fish for a week or two, and then we'll get a little northeast and they'll disappear. But the water temp is definitely colder this year than it has been years past.
Absolutely.
we had such a terrible spring that the water's just not warmed up yet. So I think the best fishing for us is yet to come, for sure.
That's the beauty about being 30 miles out to sea, is our season's extended beyond what most are. I think we get excited and anxious in mid-May when you hear all of the reports, especially with social media. You can see what everyone's doing in real time.
Right.
And they're over on the Cape, and it's like, why not us? But those with historical perspective know patience is a virtue, and it's going to come. And when we're fishing into July, all of those guys are focused on some bottom fishing and perhaps some blue fishing. So it's going to come, provided our bait stays consistent.
Yep.
And I think it will. We're moving in a positive direction. It's nice to see what bass we have are in line with the year classes that have been reproducing, because while we're focused on our local fishery, there's a bigger fishery at hand, and a lot of it's being managed properly, it seems like, with a lot of good year classes coming out of Chesapeake and the Hudson, and the 2011 year class, which they've studied intensively, are kind of what we're seeing here now, between 26 and 28 inches. So hopefully, if we can keep with a good conservation effort, and anglers remember the catch and release is important unless it's going on the table that night, I think we'll see that year class and others around it continue to grow and reproduce again.
It's great. What are we hearing from our state rep and senator as to the bill that was filed for the 3 mile closure around Nantucket? Have you heard any new news on that?
The news I heard was we were, I think, overly optimistic that we might get something pushed either through legislation or over to committee this month. What we've learned, I believe, is the right information, is that they put it on hold, and it's something that we're going to have to put some effort into next year. Now, in a political sense, which I'm not very political, I don't understand the whole process, I could probably defer to you, this is very normal. And in fact,
unfortunately it is.
This is, we even though it's been pushed, it seems like we're ahead of pace in the fact that people are talking about it, and we've got the right people behind us. So I think in a bigger sense, we just need that positive attitude and that everyone working in the same direction, and to be realistic that Rome wasn't built in a day. But I think so long as everyone's pushing forward, and who knows, maybe what we did with this bill had an impact on closing the inshore fishery. So there's other pieces that play into it. So there's always a silver lining.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that we've got guys like you and Pete Kaiser and the rest of the guys that are fighting for this, and I don't think we're going to give up the battle. So you don't win the war overnight, but you got to be consistent. So.
Well, the nice part is you talk about a handful of people who are making a big effort. What I was really impressed with was when the state came to Nantucket to discuss our fishery, the town building was full. And then when we voted at a town meeting, it was a unanimous vote. So while there's a group that's pushing it, and I appreciate everyone's efforts, I think it's easier to push when you've got a community behind you.
Yeah, and after that meeting, I talked to the fisheries guys, and they said that was the most people they've ever had at a public hearing.
Wow.
So they were impressed when they saw that. So we really appreciate all you're doing, Cam. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you on the water.
You as well, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Take
care.